Hi, this is Councillor Claire Miller. I'm the City Centre Green Councillor in Edinburgh, and this is just a quick update of the different questions that I was asking in today's Finance and Resources Committee. We had a really packed agenda and we had a committee meeting this afternoon that lasted for 3 hours, so it's just a quick rundown of the things that I was asking about. There was a few reports on the agenda to do with our workforce in the council, and I asked questions about the trends that we're seeing of our workforce numbers and the spend going up the way, and whether we are expecting to see a limit placed on that at any point, and whether the organisation is in control of that in a strategic way. I was also asking about the performance reviews. So we've recently introduced a policy around performance reviews, but the completion rates that we saw in the report before us today were pretty low. The Director of HR gave some very positive responses, and I'm confident that she will follow through on those, so we'd be really pleased to see those coming through in the future, but at the minute the response rate is not that great. And in terms of HR, the other thing that I asked was about disability. We had a report in front of us looking at closing the disability employment gap, which was super, but I think that there's some issues for me around how our workforce identify themselves, and there are a lot of complexities around whether an individual would describe themselves as disabled or not. So I was asking questions about how we tackle some of those issues and whether that was part of the work, and indeed it is. There was a report in front of us looking at the funding that's required to provide a new employability service, which was another positive report. However, it highlighted a risk for the funding because a great chunk of it would come from funding that would be as a member of the European Union. And so I was asking some tough questions of officers about how we would ensure that this kind of funding that ensures the provision of important services, in this case an employability service, which will help people who are disadvantaged and need to be brought back into the workforce, how we make sure that that security of funding is there in the event that it isn't provided as part of our Brexit transition deal. I think that these risks at the minute are incredibly important, and this is where we're starting to feel the effects of potential deals on the ground in local authorities. And then finally we had a report on the cost of providing temporary accommodation for people presenting as homeless, and that report was looking at what we call off-contract provisions, so outside of contracts that are already signed. But what it signalled was a wider issue around our temporary accommodation crisis in Edinburgh, which we're seeing. I also sit on the Housing and Economy Committee, so I see the reports coming to both. So what I was asking the convener for, and what he agreed to do, was speak to the convener of Housing and Economy and have a joined up approach across the two committees that looks at the roadmap for homelessness services that are coming out of the task force that we have had over the last year. Because I think that what we need to do is have a joined up look at the cost to provide the transitional arrangements that we're putting in place, the transformative services that they have agreed, and make sure that we understand the financial impact as well as the service impact, but look to see when are we going to see the financial side of things at an acceptable level, because at the minute we're having to sign off contract spend, which is not okay. And I also asked questions about the equalities impact, because what I was seeing was a report in front of us that was saying that there was no equalities impact, but it was showing that we're placing people outside of the local authority in temporary accommodation, and I didn't think that that was likely to have no equalities impact. I was correct when I asked the officer about this. He did say that we are seeing people being placed outside of the area in cases where that's not for special circumstances, such as domestic abuse, where it would be appropriate. So it just means then that those people are going to have to travel much further to access their jobs, or to do job seeking, or to access services that we should be providing to them to find permanent accommodation. And for me, that's unacceptable, and we really need to be tackling that. So not to be highlighting in that report, I think, was a failing. So those were very important issues that I was asking questions about at the Finance and Resources Committee today, and I look forward to taking forward that work in the new year when we're back in 2019.